Montana Territory, 1878. The evening sky bled crimson over the jagged horizon as Gabriel Quinn rode toward the distant flicker of light. 2 days of hard riding through unforgiving country with nothing but the company of his horse and the ghosts of men he'd buried. The Winchester rifle across his saddle told its own story. Like everything else in this untamed land, death traveled close at your heels. A man survived by keeping others at a distance and his wits about him. That was the code Gabriel had lived by since leaving his family's farm in Missouri at 19, and at 26, he saw no reason to change. The lamplight grew stronger, revealing a small homestead tucked against a stand of ponderosa pines, a lone cabin, a modest barn, and the outline of a corral. Gabriel had not intended to stop, but his mare needed rest, and the approaching storm promised a hard, cold night. He would offer to pay for shelter in the barn, nothing more. Attachment to people or places only gave the frontier more ways to break a man. "Who's there?" a woman's voice called out as he approached the yard. The barrel of a shotgun glinted in the fading light. Gabriel raised his hands slowly. "Just passing through, ma'am, looking for shelter from the storm, happy to sleep in your barn and be gone by sunrise." The figure stepped forward, revealing a young woman with auburn hair pulled back in a practical braid. She wore a simple calico dress beneath a worn leather coat that hung too large on her slender frame. The shotgun didn't waver in her hands. "I'm Gabriel Quinn," he offered, keeping his voice even. "I can pay or work for the shelter." The woman studied him for a long moment, her pale blue eyes sharp with suspicion. Finally, she lowered the gun slightly. "Lily Walters," she said. "My husband's not here, but he'll be back any minute." The slight tremble in her voice betrayed the lie. Gabriel nodded, understanding her caution. A woman alone on the frontier had reason to fear strangers. "I'll just tend to my horse and keep to myself, Mrs. Walters." "It's Miss," she corrected, then immediately looked as though she regretted the admission. "The barn's there. You can use the empty stall." Gabriel dismounted, noting how the woman kept her distance. The homestead showed signs of struggle, weathered boards that needed replacing, an unfinished fence, overgrown garden plots. Too much work for a single person, especially a woman barely into her 20s. "Storm's coming fast," he observed, eyeing the darkening sky. "Your roof looks secure." "Secure enough," she answered, though her gaze followed his to the missing shingles visible even in the dusk light. Gabriel led his mare toward the barn, feeling Lily Walters' eyes on his back. The frontier was no place for a woman alone, but it wasn't his concern. By morning he'd be gone, continuing north to the cattle outfit that had promised him work. Attachment to people only brought pain. He'd learned that lesson when his brother died in his arms during the war. The frontier demanded solitude. It was safer that way. As Gabriel settled his horse, the first drops of rain began to fall, quickly becoming a downpour that drummed against the barn roof. Through the gaps in the weathered boards, he saw Lily rush toward the cabin, her figure briefly illuminated by lightning. He told himself again that her struggles were not his concern. Then came the sound of splintering wood and Lily's panicked cry. Gabriel grabbed his rifle and ran through the storm. Lightning revealed the scene. A massive branch from a nearby pine had crashed through the cabin roof, leaving a gaping hole where rain now poured in. Lily stood in the doorway, her face pale with shock. "Are you hurt?" he called over the howling wind. She shook her head, clutching her shotgun against her chest like a talisman. "The roof." "I see it," Gabriel assessed the damage. "We need to cover that before everything inside is ruined." "There's canvas in the barn," she said, her earlier suspicion giving way to practicality. For the next hour, they worked together in the driving rain. Gabriel climbed onto the slippery roof, securing the canvas while Lily handed up tools and rope. Inside, they moved furniture away from the worst of the leaks, setting out buckets and pans to catch the water that made it through. "Been out here long?" Gabriel asked as they finally sat by the stone fireplace, their clothes soaked and muddy. "2 years." Lily stared into the flames, her 22 years etched with weariness beyond her age. "My brother Thomas and I came from Chicago after our parents died. We thought we could make something here." She gestured to a photograph on the mantel of herself and a young man with the same auburn hair. "Fever took him last winter." Gabriel nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "And you stayed." "This land is all I have left," she said simply. "I promised Thomas I wouldn't give up." They fell silent, the crackling fire and drumming rain filling the space between them. Gabriel recognized the hollow determination in her eyes, the same that had driven him through countless lonely years. Survive, endure, keep moving, never get close enough to lose someone again. You should leave when the weather clears, Lily said suddenly. This place isn't safe for a woman alone, that's what everyone tells me. And what do you tell them? That I'd rather die on my own land than live by someone else's charity. The fire reflected in her blue eyes, transforming vulnerability to steel. I don't need saving, Mr. Quinn. Gabriel couldn't help the slight smile that crossed his face. I believe you, Miss Walters. Morning revealed the full extent of the damage. The roof would need proper repairs, not just the temporary canvas covering. Gabriel found himself offering to stay another day to help, telling himself it was merely the decent thing to do, nothing more. One day became 3 as they worked together to replace broken rafters and missing shingles. Gabriel discovered Lily was no stranger to hard work. She handed him tools before he asked, moved with the efficiency of someone who had learned to do everything alone, and never complained despite the blisters forming on her hands. On the 4th morning, as Gabriel prepared to leave, a group of riders appeared on the horizon. Lily tensed beside him, her hand moving instinctively toward the shotgun leaning against the porch rail. Trouble? Gabriel asked quietly. Harold Jennings and his men, she replied, her voice tight. He owns the big spread to the east, wants this land for the creek that runs through it. 5 riders approached, led by a heavyset man with a thick mustache and expensive clothes. He pulled his horse to a stop, eyeing Gabriel with suspicion. Didn't know you had company, Miss Walters, Jennings said, his tone falsely pleasant. New hired hand. Just passing through, Gabriel replied before Lily could answer. Helping with some repairs. Jennings nodded, his gaze calculating. Mighty neighborly, Miss Walters here is stubborn about accepting help, especially my generous offer to buy this worthless patch of dirt. He turned to Lily. My offer still stands. $500 is more than fair, considering you can't possibly manage alone. My answer hasn't changed, Lily said evenly. This land isn't for sale. Jennings smiled coldly. Winter's coming, Miss Walters. Might be your last chance to leave with something in your pocket. His eyes flicked to the damaged roof. Shame about these accidents that keep happening. The implication hung in the air like gunsmoke. Gabriel stepped forward slightly, one hand resting near his sidearm. He had no stake in this fight, but the threat in Jennings' voice stirred something he'd long suppressed. Miss Walters made herself clear, he said quietly. Jennings studied Gabriel, measuring the threat. Whatever he saw made him reconsider pressing further. With a tight nod, he turned his horse. Think on it, Miss Walters. Won't be making this offer come spring. They watched in silence as the riders disappeared down the trail. You shouldn't have done that, Lily said once they were alone. Now you're involved. I'm leaving today, Gabriel reminded her, though the words felt hollow. Their quarrel is with you, not me. Lily looked at him directly, her blue eyes clear in the morning light. Why did you stay to help? You could have ridden out after the storm. Gabriel had no ready answer. The code he'd lived by for years, keep moving, stay uninvolved, had somehow faltered in the past few days. Needed to be sure my roof repairs would hold, he finally said. Lily didn't believe him, he could see it in her expression, but she nodded and extended her hand. Thank you, Mr. Quinn. He took her hand, noting the strength in her grip despite her slender fingers. Gabriel, he corrected. Safe travels, Gabriel. She turned toward the cabin, shoulders straight despite the weight they carried. Gabriel mounted his horse, pointing her north toward his intended destination. He rode steadily for an hour before slowing, then stopping entirely. The distant shape of Lily's homestead was barely visible now. Ahead lay work, wages, and the solitary life he'd chosen. Behind him was a woman facing winter alone with enemies circling. Gabriel closed his eyes briefly. He'd survived by avoiding entanglements, by never letting anyone close enough to matter. It was the only way to endure the frontier's harshness. He turned his horse around. When Gabriel rode back into Lily's yard, she was chopping wood with grim determination. She paused, axe in hand, surprise evident on her face. Forgot something? She asked, wariness returning to her eyes. Gabriel dismounted slowly. I heard the Rocking J Ranch is hiring hands for winter. It's just 10 miles west. Lily set the axe down. And I figure I could work there, help you with repairs when I'm not on shift. He shrugged, trying to make the offer sound casual, at least until spring. Suspicion clouded her features. Why would you do that? The honest answer was one Gabriel wasn't ready to voice, even to himself. Instead, he gestured to the half-finished fence, the broken wagon wheel, the thin cattle in the corral. Because Jennings is waiting for you to fail, and I don't like bullies. Lily studied him for a long moment. I can't pay you. Not asking for payment. And I don't need a protector. Gabriel nodded. But an extra set of hands might help you keep what's yours. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken questions. Finally, Lily gave a short nod. There's a room in the back. It's small, but it's dry now, thanks to your repairs. I'll be back after I speak with the foreman at Rocking J, Gabriel said, feeling strangely like he'd passed some invisible test. That night, as Gabriel settled into the small back room of Lily's cabin, he questioned his decision. His belongings consisted of saddlebags containing spare clothes, ammunition, a few books, and the battered tintype of his family taken before the war tore them apart. The life of a man who never stayed anywhere long enough to accumulate more. Through the thin wall, he could hear Lily moving around the main room, the soft sounds of someone preparing for sleep. The domesticity of it felt foreign, dangerous even. Gabriel had avoided such connections since watching his brother die at Shiloh, since returning home to find his parents broken by grief. The frontier offered escape, constant movement, no attachments, no one to lose. Yet here he was in a stranger's home, already entangled in her battles. The Rocking J Ranch hired Gabriel the next day. The foreman was glad for an experienced hand, especially with cattle drives finished and the quiet winter work beginning. The arrangement gave Gabriel time to help Lily with the heavier tasks around her homestead, finishing the fence, repairing the wagon, reinforcing the barn. They settled into an uneasy routine. Gabriel rode to the ranch before dawn and returned in late afternoon. Lily maintained her independence, often having completed difficult tasks before he could offer help. Their conversations were brief, practical, rarely personal. She kept her distance, and he understood why. Trust was a luxury few could afford in such unforgiving country. November brought the first heavy snow, and with it, trouble. Gabriel returned one evening to find Lily standing in the yard, rifle in hand, facing 3 of Jennings' men. The remains of her chicken coop lay scattered across the snow, dead chickens piled nearby. Just a misunderstanding, one of the men was saying as Gabriel approached. Thought we saw a wolf getting at your birds. Guess we scared it off too late. Wolves don't shoot chickens, Lily replied, her voice cold as the air between them. Gabriel dismounted, letting his coat fall open to reveal his holstered revolver. Problem here. The men exchanged glances. No problem, the spokesman said, just explaining to Miss Walters how we tried to help with a predator problem. Mighty far from Jennings' property, Gabriel observed. We were tracking it. In the fresh snow, Gabriel pointed to the unmarked expanse surrounding the coop. Strange how it left no tracks. The tension stretched between them until one of the other men nudged his companion. Let's go. Jennings will want to know we delivered the message. They mounted and rode away, leaving Gabriel and Lily staring at the destruction. He's getting bolder, Lily said quietly. This is just the beginning. Gabriel nodded, surveying the damage. I'll build a new coop tomorrow, closer to the house. I can do it, Lily insisted. I know you can. Gabriel met her gaze, but you don't have to do everything alone. Something shifted in Lily's expression, a barely perceptible softening. She looked away quickly. We should salvage what meat we can before it freezes solid. That night, as they sat by the fire eating chicken stew, the barrier between them began to crumble. Perhaps it was the shared anger at Jennings' men, or simply the growing familiarity of weeks spent in proximity. Why did you really come back? Lily asked suddenly, setting aside her empty bowl. Gabriel considered deflecting the question as he had before, but something in her direct gaze demanded honesty. I've been running for a long time, he admitted. Thought if I kept moving, never settled, I wouldn't have to watch anyone else die. Your family. My brother first. Then my parents in different ways. Gabriel stared into the fire. The war changed everything. Lily nodded, understanding in her eyes. Thomas and I came west because there was nothing left for us in Chicago. Our parents died in a fire. I was at work, Thomas was at school. Her voice grew quiet. Everything we had fit in 2 trunks. And now this land is all I have left of him, his dream. She looked around the small cabin. It isn't much, but it's mine, ours. Gabriel understood then, her fierce independence, her refusal to surrender. This land was more than property, it was memory, legacy, purpose. Jennings won't stop, he said carefully. I know, Lily met his gaze steadily, but neither will I. As winter deepened, their alliance strengthened. The practical partnership evolved as they began sharing meals, then stories, then dreams. Gabriel described the cattle ranch he once hoped to build. Lily shared Thomas's plans for orchards and crops that would have transformed the homestead. December brought Christmas, and with it an unexpected thaw in their carefully maintained boundaries. Gabriel returned from town with supplies and a small package wrapped in brown paper. "What's this?" Lily asked when he placed it on the table. "Christmas is tomorrow," he said, suddenly awkward. "It isn't much." Lily unwrapped the package carefully, revealing a small silver pendant on a chain. "Gabriel, I can't." "It was my mother's," he explained, "one of the few things I kept. She would want someone to wear it, not keep it hidden in my saddlebags." Lily held the necklace, her expression unreadable. "I don't have anything for you." "You've given me shelter," Gabriel said simply. "That's enough." She looked up at him then, tears brightening her blue eyes. "Not just shelter," she said softly. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken meaning. When Lily stepped forward, Gabriel didn't move away. Her lips met his, tentative at first, then with growing certainty. It was a confirmation of something that had been building slowly, despite all his efforts to prevent it. When they separated, Lily touched his face gently. "I never thought I'd find this here." Gabriel covered her hand with his. "I never thought I'd stop running long enough to look." The winter that followed was the happiest of Gabriel's life, despite the constant threat from Jennings and the harsh conditions. They worked together during the day, Gabriel riding to the ranch when needed but spending more time at the homestead. At night, they shared the main bedroom, their bodies finding comfort and passion neither had expected. In February, Lily announced she was pregnant. The news filled Gabriel with equal parts joy and terror. A child meant permanence, vulnerability, all the connections he had once fled. "We should marry," he said, holding her close beneath the quilts as wind howled outside. Lily looked up at him, searching his face. "Because of the baby." "Because I love you," Gabriel answered, surprising himself with the ease of the admission. "The baby is just one more reason to make it official." They married in March, a small ceremony at the territorial courthouse with witnesses from the Rocking J. Lily wore her best dress with Gabriel's mother's pendant. Gabriel wore a new shirt and his freshly polished boots. The judge pronounced them husband and wife with the efficiency of a man with a docket full of cases, but the moment felt sacred nonetheless. Jennings made his next move in April, as the snow melted and streams ran high with spring runoff. Gabriel returned from town to find Lily standing at the edge of their property, staring at the creek that served as their water source. "It's gone," she said as he approached, "the water." The creek bed lay nearly dry, just a trickle where there should have been a rushing stream. Gabriel followed the creek upstream, finding the cause half a mile away. A newly constructed dam diverted the water onto Jennings' property through a roughly dug channel. "He can't do this," Lily said when Gabriel returned with the news. "Legally, he might be able to," Gabriel admitted. "Water rights are complicated. Without that creek, we can't irrigate the fields. The cattle won't have water." Lily placed a protective hand over her growing belly. "He's trying to force us out." Gabriel studied her face, seeing the determination there despite the fear in her eyes. 6 months ago, he would have advised her to take Jennings' money and leave. Now, with their child growing inside her, with the home they were building together, retreat was unthinkable. "I'll talk to him," Gabriel decided. "See if we can reach an agreement." "He doesn't want agreement," Lily warned. "He wants surrender." "Then he'll be disappointed." Gabriel rode to the Jennings ranch the next morning, unarmed to show peaceful intentions. Harold Jennings received him in a study that flaunted his wealth, leather-bound books, expensive furniture, silver-framed photographs of his deceased wife and grown children back east. "Quinn," Jennings acknowledged, not offering a seat. "Heard you married the Walters girl. Congratulations." "Thank you," Gabriel replied evenly. "I've come about the creek." Jennings smiled coldly. "My creek now, I believe. My men traced the headwaters and they're on my property." "That makes the water mine." "The creek has run through the Walters homestead for years. You know, diverting it will destroy the farm." "Business, Quinn, nothing personal." Jennings poured himself whiskey without offering any to his visitor. "I need that water for my expanded operation." "We're willing to share." "I'm not," Jennings set his glass down with finality. "You have two choices. Sell to me now at my original price, or watch your land dry up and take half that amount by summer's end. Gabriel maintained his composure with effort. There are laws. There are lawyers, Jennings interrupted. Mine are in Helena, yours are, he gestured vaguely. Oh, that's right, you can't afford any. Gabriel recognized the futility of further discussion. This isn't over. It was over the moment Thomas Walters died, Jennings said dismissively. The girl should have left then, would have saved everyone trouble. Gabriel returned home to find Lily working in their small garden, stubbornly planting seeds in soil that would soon be too dry to sustain them. Her auburn hair was tied back, her face flushed with exertion, her pregnancy now visible beneath her work dress. Seeing her there, determined, brave, refusing to surrender despite overwhelming odds, something crystallized in Gabriel's heart. This woman had saved him from a life of solitude and fear. She had shown him that connection wasn't weakness, that love was worth the risk of loss. Now she needed him to fight for their future. We'll need to dig a well, he said instead of reporting his failed negotiation, and construct cisterns to catch rainwater. Lily straightened, reading his expression. That bad. He won't budge, Gabriel confirmed. But neither will we. For 2 weeks they worked to adapt to their new reality. Gabriel dug a well while Lily designed a system of water collection from the cabin and barn roofs. They reduced their small herd to only what they could water by hand if necessary. Every adaptation was a refusal to surrender, a declaration of their determination to survive. Then came the night riders. Gabriel woke to the sound of approaching horses. A quick glance at the clock showed it was past midnight. Beside him, Lily stirred. Stay inside, he whispered, reaching for his rifle. Gabriel. Please, Lily, he touched her cheek in the darkness, for the baby. He moved to the window in time to see 5 mounted men approaching the barn, torches in hand. Stepping onto the porch, Gabriel raised his rifle. That's far enough, he called out. The riders halted. One moved forward, his face obscured by a bandana. Nothing personal, Quinn, just business. Jennings says either you leave or we burn you out. Firing on this property would be a mistake, Gabriel replied steadily, though his heart hammered in his chest. 1 man against 5 weren't odds he liked, the leader laughed. No witnesses out here. By morning there'll be nothing left but ashes. Gabriel aimed at the ground near the leader's horse. Last warning. Before he could fire, a shot rang out from inside the cabin. The bullet struck the dirt near the horses, causing them to rear in panic. Through the window, Gabriel glimpsed Lily with her shotgun. The momentary confusion gave Gabriel his opportunity. He fired deliberately, striking one rider in the shoulder. The man cried out, dropping his torch into the snow. Next one, center mass, Gabriel warned, working the lever to chamber another round. Who wants to die for Harold Jennings tonight? The wounded man clutched his shoulder, cursing, this ain't worth dying for Jake. The leader hesitated, clearly reconsidering his options. Finally, he jerked his head toward the others. This isn't over, Quinn. It is for tonight, Gabriel answered, rifle still raised. They retreated, taking their wounded companion with them. Only when they disappeared into the darkness did Gabriel lower his weapon. His hands shook with the aftermath of confrontation and the knowledge of how close they had come to disaster. Inside, he found Lily by the window, shotgun still ready. We can't stay, she said quietly. They'll come back with more men. We're not running, Gabriel insisted, though fear for her and their unborn child gnawed at him. This is our home. Lily set the shotgun aside and took his hands. I've been thinking about what you said, about water rights being complicated. What if Jennings doesn't own the headwaters legally? What if we could prove it? Gabriel frowned. What do you mean? Thomas kept all our paperwork. The original survey, land office records, everything. She moved to a trunk in the corner and began searching through documents. He was always precise about boundaries. Together they pored over the papers by lamplight. The original survey maps showed the creek's headwaters originated on public land, not Jennings' property. The homestead claims specifically included water rights to the creek. This could change everything, Gabriel said, hope rising. But Jennings has powerful friends in the territorial government. So we need allies of our own. Lily's expression was determined. The Rocking J, the Hansons to the north, the McDermotts with their sheep operation, they all depend on water rights too. If Jennings can take ours, he could take theirs next. Gabriel nodded slowly, a plan forming. We need to go to Helena, present these documents to the land office, file a formal complaint. I'll go, Lily offered. You stay and protect the homestead. We go together, Gabriel countered. First, we'll visit the neighbors, form an alliance. Jennings won't risk moving against all of us combined. For the next week, they rode from homestead to ranch, building support. Many had suffered Jennings' intimidation tactics before, but individually they had been too weak to oppose him. Together, with legal documentation supporting their case, they stood a chance. They left for Helena with promises from neighbors to watch their property. The journey was difficult for Lily, now 5 months pregnant, but she never complained. In the territorial capital, they filed their complaint with land officials and hired a lawyer with pooled funds from their new alliance. Jennings won't take this lying down, their lawyer warned. He'll fight, and he fights dirty. So do we, Lily replied with quiet intensity. The legal battle moved slowly, but their alliance held. When they returned to the homestead, they found neighbors had repaired the damage from the night riders and restored partial water flow by destroying enough of Jennings' dam to let some creek water through. June brought a response from the land office. An official would visit in July to inspect the headwaters and review all claims. It wasn't a victory, but it was progress. It also made Jennings desperate. The attack came at dawn. Gabriel was checking fences when he heard gunshots from the direction of the cabin. He raced back, heart in his throat, to find 3 of Jennings' men attempting to force their way inside while Lily defended herself with the shotgun. Gabriel didn't hesitate. He fired twice, dropping one man with a shot to the leg and forcing the others to seek cover. They returned fire, bullets splintering wood around him as he worked his way closer to the cabin. "Lily," he shouted. "Are you hit?" "I'm all right," her voice was steady despite the danger. The exchange of gunfire continued for desperate minutes until suddenly the attackers broke off, retreating toward their horses. Through the gun's smoke, Gabriel saw why riders were approaching from the west. Neighbors from the Rocking J and surrounding homesteads, drawn by the sound of gunfire. Jennings' men fled, leaving their wounded companion behind. The newcomers pursued them to the property line before returning. Inside the cabin, Gabriel found Lily pale but unhurt, the shotgun still in her hands. He embraced her carefully, feeling her trembling against him. "It's over," he murmured into her hair. "They're gone." "It's not over," she corrected, pulling back to look at him. "Not until Jennings is stopped for good." The captured attacker provided the solution. Facing charges and abandoned by his employer, he revealed Jennings had orchestrated not only the water diversion and night attacks, but also the accidents that had plagued the Walters homestead since Thomas's death. More damning, he admitted Jennings had forged documents extending his property lines to falsely claim ownership of the creek headwaters. The territorial marshal arrived 3 days later, along with the land office official. Their investigation was thorough and damning. Harold Jennings was arrested for fraud, attempted murder, and a dozen lesser charges. His ranch would be held as evidence and potential restitution to those he had wronged. "It's really over," Lily said as they watched the marshal's party depart with Jennings in custody. She leaned against Gabriel, one hand resting on her rounded belly. "We won." Gabriel wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "You won." "I just helped." She looked up at him, her blue eyes clear in the summer light. "No, what you gave me was more than help, Gabriel. You gave me belief when mine was failing. You showed me I didn't have to fight alone." He touched the silver pendant that still hung around her neck. "And you saved me from a life of running. From the belief that connection only brought pain." August brought the birth of their daughter, Sarah Thomas Quinn, named for Gabriel's mother and Lily's brother. With her auburn hair and her father's dark eyes, she became the center of their world. The homestead flourished once water rights were legally established. The creek flowed freely, irrigation ditches brought life to fields, and the small herd began to grow. By the following spring, Gabriel had resigned from the Rocking J to work their expanding ranch full-time. The neighboring homesteaders who had stood with them against Jennings became friends and trading partners. What had once been a lonely outpost transformed into the heart of a community. On a warm evening in June, nearly 2 years after Gabriel had first ridden onto the property seeking shelter from a storm, he sat with Lily on the porch of their expanded cabin. Sarah toddled in the yard, chasing fireflies with delighted squeals. In the distance, cattle grazed peacefully in green pastures. "I never thought I'd have this," Gabriel said, taking Lily's hand. "Family, home." "Purpose?" "Neither did I," Lily leaned her head against his shoulder. "Not after Thomas died. I was just surviving, not living." Gabriel watched their daughter, marveling at how completely his life had changed. The man who had ridden onto this homestead believing solitude was safety could hardly recognize himself in the husband and father he had become. "You saved me," he said simply. Lily smiled. "We saved each other." As darkness settled over the Montana landscape, Gabriel Quinn held his wife close, understanding at last that the frontier's greatest gift wasn't the freedom of solitude, but the strength found in connection. In loving Lily, in building a family and a home, he had discovered what he had been running from for so long wasn't pain, but its possibility. The risk had been worth it. The love they had found amid hardship had not only saved them both, it had transformed them. Where once there had been two wounded souls fighting separate battles for survival, now stood a family with roots deep in the soil of their shared dreams. And that, Gabriel knew, was a legacy that would endure long after they were gone.